Welcome, you're watching a new episode of Melt. I'm Ritvika Gupta, and this week we are once again focusing on women in advertising. To find out if the industry is doing enough to address the challenges women face, Anant Rangaswami, editor of Melt, will be in conversation today with Pallavi Chakravarti, Executive Creative Director at Taproot Dentsu. Let's get ready to melt with Pallavi Chakravarti.
Hello, Pallavi.
Hi.
Hi. To begin with, let me give you a hypothetical construct which I want you to help me with. Imagine there was a boy and you who joined advertising on the same date. Imagine that both of you had more or less the same educational qualifications and more or less the same resume.
Right.
Have you had to work harder to reach where you are than that boy would have had to work?
Interesting. The short answer to that is no.
Right. So can I have a long answer?
Yeah. So my personal experience has always been I'm a person in advertising, not a woman in advertising. Of course, this is a personal experience. I do have some caveats to that, though. So in my early years in particular, and frankly, even now, you keep thinking it's going to get easier, but it doesn't. It's never really the life of leisure that you think it will be when you start climbing and get into the higher echelons. In fact, if anything, the pressure doubles, trebles. So I must say that I don't know about whether a guy has had it easier than I, but I do know that there have been certain factors which have let me give as much time to my job as I've been able to. I will have to admit that, so not having children is a massive factor in that. I think about it, I look around, I look at women who are working today, and not just in advertising, across the board, right? When you have kids, there is a certain thing that changes. I mean, it is undeniable. You may call upon the man to share his, have his fair share of the duties. And of course, today I've seen a lot of very, very hands-on dads. But there is a certain time commitment that a mother has to put in. And advertising, the life that we all know and the life that we live, breathe, is about late nights. It's about crazy erratic schedules. It's about having your bag packed and kept in one corner of the room and you're ready and, you can up and leave anytime. It's about shoots. It's about weekends. These are things that, it may change from agency to agency. There may be crests and troughs, right? But by and large, there is a massive commitment and it is not the most organized of jobs. So to be able to give as much of myself to the job as I have been able to, and I would dare say as much as a man can, right, is probably the reason why I'm saying to you that I've not had it really any different than a man. Yeah.
Right. So let us suppose that this is a situation, not for you, but for women who've had children. Now, in your view, do they have it harder than a man? Again, there's a woman and a guy, they join at the same day. And then 8 years later, the woman had a child and the man didn't, or man did, it doesn't matter. Does the man have it easier?
I think it would be unfair to make a blanket statement and say that, fathers everywhere have it easier. They have the same anxieties. It's their child too. So they go back home and they worry when there's a temperature and they stay up when the baby is colic. No arguments there. But having said that, a woman coming back to the circuit, and this I speak from personal experience, I've heard it said, right? When a woman is seeking to come back, get back in the game, let's say, depending on the amount of help she has, if she's living with parents, in-laws, has help at home, etc., depending on that, the time varies. And of course, depending on choice, because some people decide that they just want to be there for their kids in the very, very early formative years, and they choose to get back a little later. Some people say, okay, 6 months and I'm back, right?
Sure.
Let's say, again, no names taken, obviously, but I have seen somebody who tried to come back in 2 years down, right? And the questions that are asked, maybe never on their face, but behind the scenes is always, will she be able to give enough? Will she be able to do the things that everybody else around her can? Men and women, right? I mean, there is a time commitment issue. There is a, balance. There is a tightrope. So will she be able to deliver? And it's a very, very real fear in the minds of prospective employers. And I've seen it often enough cause a stumbling block. and
Right.
it just doesn't allow you to come back in the game. And then so I think what's sometimes meant to come as a punctuation mark, a comma in your life, just sometimes ends up becoming a full stop in your career.
Right.
That's
So, do you think organizations in advertising, for a moment, let's talk about our little world and our little business. Do you think we are doing enough to understand and deal with the problems that women who leave the workplace to have a child and come back? Do you think enough is being done to help and address that issue? From an HR perspective.
Yeah, I would have to again say that this is an organizational thing. I don't think there's anything happening at an industry level.
Right.
I don't think that, like all of us coming together, like today you and I are having this conversation a good fortnight after Women's Day, so that's delightful. That's a plus right there, because normally these kind of conversations I had just on the cusp of Women's Day and then they're neatly tucked away and forgotten about after that. But I do think that more and more you're hearing narratives which are talking about how do we give women the room, right, to get back after a life event like pregnancy, like childbirth, like child rearing, right? It never really stops. But how do we make working hours more flexible? You hear this being spoken about. It was not being spoken about earlier. You hear things like equal parental leave. You hear things like a father just doesn't waltz off to the operation theater and then come back out and distribute laddus and take 2 weeks off and then come back to work again after that. Today, in some organizations, people have a choice of staying home for 6 months, right? Is it as much as it needs to be? Perhaps not. There are murmurs and there is probably the beginning of something, but it's definitely nascent. And I think this kind of conversation and maybe at a larger level would actually affect change, if not today, a year down, 2 years, 5 years.
Now, I'll give you a bit of time to answer the question. If you can think of 3 people in the industry who should take a strong public position and say, let's take this seriously, let's produce a white paper on how to address this issue, not just wait for nature to take its course and we crack the problem, the murmurs become louder and louder, and in 2025 we'll address the problem. What if you wanted to address it by 2022? Imagine you had to name 3 people who should form a committee and take charge of this. Who would those 3 people be?
That's a tough one, actually.
It is.
Because I think anyone with a conscience or who actually believes in this, in the fact that, equality is not lip service, equality is actual, giving of chances, which, I mean, when life is the way it is, right, there is a biological reality out there. You're not going to, tomorrow men are not going to step in and say, chalo, I will have the child instead of my wife. So when in a situation like this, which we know is you cannot correct for, I think anybody who, is of the same mind that something like this needs to be corrected for should be able to pick up cudgels.
No, you're saying there should be, but obviously not enough is being done. I mean, that's also apparent in the conversation I'm having with you and that I've had in the last few weeks. So that's why I say.
So maybe if let's say we don't take names, I say we look at designations, because things trickle down from the top. And at least in our little world of advertising, like you said, I suspect that the ratio of male CEOs to female CEOs is, not 1:1. So what if every CXO of a company decided to, come together and form a body that actually took this seriously? Because it's only when the leaders come forward and do something that is going to trickle down. I'm not even saying HR. I'm saying the people who are in positions that enable you to hire or enable you to effect organizational change or change in policy, right? So which is why I'm keeping HR out of this, and I'm saying that perhaps it is in the hands of people who run their agencies to come together and take a stand on this. A lot of whom would already have grown kids by now. So maybe it's time for them to look back, think about all the things that didn't happen when they were raising their children, and correct for it.
Okay, so now, while you did say that you don't have too much to complain about, and maybe that was because you didn't have children, it was a choice you made and so on. But even then, are there situations where you think things could be better for a woman in the business of advertising? Because what is clear is we need good talent to enter advertising. And in that, I mean, we can count we can rattle off rather, 10, 15, 20, 30 women CDs across. And there are a lot of CEOs, by the way, and a lot of CMOs. So what needs to happen to encourage this? And it seems to be it's better off than a lot of other industries. But what needs to happen to make this whole process smoother, faster, better?
So there, Anant, I think there's an issue with the kind of talent that we are attracting as an industry, regardless of gender. Okay, so I don't think this is a woman issue.
Right.
I think that there's a problem. I mean, there's a paucity of talent. Paucity of talent, let's take some of the blame ourselves. There's a paucity of mentoring or retaining, right? I think pay scales for the little ones definitely need some kind of looking at. There was a point in time where advertising was a serious career option. I'm not so sure that same mentality courses through the veins of people passing out of communications courses today. And also there is fragmentation. So when we say advertising, the yesteryear definition of advertising was one agency, sometimes with media, creative, everything under one roof. Today there are 85,000 agencies. There's an agency for potting plants, and there's an agency for SEO, everything, right? So I don't think that retention of talent or attracting talent is a gender-based thing. You asked me, coming to your question, could things be better for women? Yeah, I'm sure they could, because you still see the one thing that I think something like Me Too did, right, was at least make it not okay for people to indulge in casual sexism, right? So at least people think twice. I'm not sure whether they operate from a place of understanding or whether they operate from a place of fear today, right? That, oh my God, it could be me next. I could be called out or shamed. But at least, I don't know, it's sowed the seeds of something where people start thinking about how to talk in front of women, what might be deemed offensive, what might be a joke to some but not to others. Where does the line lie? Where does consent come in? Friendship. I mean, there are some things about advertising. We are a more casual industry than most. We're not rigid about about anything. Actually, the protocol is never. I've seen in other businesses, you go in and call your CEO sir. You don't do that over here. You go in and call a guy who's 20 years older than you by his first name, right? So there's a lot of things that's much more lax about our business.
Is that lax or is that good?
I think that's great.
Okay.
I would not disturb that. That's the reason why things are more fluid and dynamic. So that's the thing. I think at least it started a conversation about within that. So many a slip tends to happen, like between the cracks. So sometimes because we are a more friendly and accommodating kind of setup, largely the industry I'm talking about is one big whole, certain things tend to be passed off as all right, but it's not all right. And I think some conversations, again, big conversations have happened around that. And today, like I said, I don't know whether people are doing it because they don't want to be the next one on the chopping block, or because they genuinely understand that there is a line and it must be respected. But that kind of thing has changed. So there are to that end, I think things could change. I think equal pay is something that, it's a thorny subject, because you can't wax eloquent about equal pay unless you have data in front of you that says here's the guy's salary and here's the girl's. But having said that, and this is a conversation I've had on a lot of forums, women don't negotiate hard. And that's something that we have seen. All of us who hire, and all of us who have been hired, and all of us who have many decades of experience under our belt can look back and confidently tell you that women don't ask for what is their due. They don't feel comfortable, for whatever it's worth, to come forward and play hardball. These are things that can and should be fixed. You're working. It's a working environment, a professional environment. What you deserve, or what you think you deserve, you should be as eloquent while voicing that as somebody of the opposite gender. So there are things that I think that can improve. It's not
Right.
a unidimensional thing. And to that end, what you said about a year-long conversation rather than flavor of the season really helps.
Right. I asked Sneha, Shoini, Suparna, all of them this question, that would you encourage young girls to join television production or television direction? Now I'm going to ask you, would you, if there was 15-year-old girl that you bumped into when you went home for a holiday, and she said, should I join advertising? Should I study advertising and join it? What is your answer to that?
Oh, a resounding yes.
Pardon? Resounding yes, despite all the concerns you have about what advertising is going through today?
Yes, because I think that dialogue has begun.
Right.
And if you don't get women in, right, people are not going to grow into leadership positions from trees. They have to be groomed. They have to be nurtured. They have to stay the course. It's not enough just to come in and then drop out. That's the whole point. At every step of the way, I don't think, if a guy asked me, should I get into advertising? I'd say yes. If a girl asked me, I'd say yes, provided you have the talent. Show me your portfolio. If you're talking about a creative job, right? If you got the chops for it, please come in. After that, it is the industry's responsibility to make sure that the woman stays there, because the guy is going to stay there. The woman will likely go on to have a child or get married, have a child, do the usual, go the textbook way, right? And at that point, we should not have to lose a good talent because there just weren't enough tricks in the book to keep people back or to encourage them. So my answer is a yes, because I think that the next generation really needs to see, we keep talking diversity, inclusion, etc. And that in the same breath, I've heard a lot of men say, Are aajkal kya hai? Nowadays you have to have a quorum on every jury, on every, there's a quota, there's a ladies quota. That is only going to go away if, it becomes seamless, if it becomes organic, equal number of men and women in the organization, because then as people rise through the ranks, you're going to have willy-nilly an equal number of people, men and women, who make it to the top. Today, because we've had so many people falling by the wayside in the last 2-3 decades, that's why the ratio is so skewed.
Right. Pallavi, as a creative director, a lot of your output is based on client briefs. So if the client wants a gender imbalance or a gender insensitive element in the commercial you're making or the campaign you're making, how would you react to it? To give you an example, let us say you're doing a car commercial and the client says, make sure there are at least 2 women in the car, in the good-looking women in the background. For example, how would you deal with that?
I speak for myself.
Of course, this whole interview is where you speak for yourself, which hopefully 100 people like you speak for yourself, it becomes a conversation.
Yes, absolutely. You're right. I would take it up.
Right.
I would not sit there and listen. And I have it in the past.
Right. You have in the past.
I have taken matters up. When there's been strange suggestions, right? I mean, then it is our collective responsibility to point out that this is not the way the world is moving. Things have changed. This might have been acceptable and isn't, for a number of very good reasons today. So there has to be a voice. I'm not saying Chanda Gado. I'm not saying go be an Andolanist. You have to sit across the table, talk to somebody, look them in the eye and say what you're asking for is not kosher on many counts. And X, Y, Z. And we should not be doing this, because far from getting the brand where it will be, today the world we live in, it's not going to get you anywhere. You will come, under the scanner, there will be flack, you will be trolled, but those are not the real reasons why you should not be doing this. You should not be doing this because it's not the right thing to do. So as communicators, if we don't do that, then that's a miss on our part. Right.
Okay. And do you think overall in the last 10 years or so, you have seen advertising being more sensitive to gender issues than in the historic past?
Yeah, I'd have to say yes. I don't know how much of it percolates down to the general public, because India is way more than Bombay and its advertising circuit, but it's a start. We cannot question intent. The intent has, taken seed.
So Pallavi, hopefully there are a lot of young women watching this show, and with your permission, we would like to share your email ID so that they could write to you for their concerns, some kind of soft mentoring, but we can do that only with your permission. Is that okay with you?
Yes, please share away. Yeah.
Fantastic. Lovely talking to you, and hope to have many more conversations like this, and hope to talk to you perhaps 6 months from now. And like I said, what we're doing is trying to have a continuous conversation. So we'll be talking to a lot of you and getting back to a lot of you as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anant. Bye.
And that was Pallavi Chakravarti sharing how the advertising industry can offer ways to better support women in their careers. If you wish to get in touch with Pallavi, you can email her at pallavi.chakravarti@taprootdentsu.com. With that, let's move on to our next segment, Creative Picks. First up, we have a new ad by Apple which uses tabla beats to highlight the strength of iPhone 12. Titled Fumble, the ad features a woman fumbling with her phone for several seconds before it finally slips out of her control and hits the ground. But nothing happens to the phone because hey, it's iPhone 12. As usual, Apple does a good job of highlighting its product benefits by showing off the durability of iPhone 12 ceramic shield. I also like the way the ad uses tabla beats to depict the fumble. It builds tension, anticipation, and you can't really predict the beats or what's going to happen next in the ad. The tabla beats have been used from the song The Conference by British Indian musician Nitin Sawhney. This one's interesting and grabs attention. Next, we have an ad by Mother Dairy for its ice creams range titled Khushiyon Ki Parampara. The film shows a family coming together to enjoy their favorite ice cream flavors as a daily 8 p.m. ritual whenever the power goes out. Even after the blackout gets fixed, the family doesn't stop their daily tradition. The ad has a feel-good vibe and captures some endearing family moments. Given the times we're living in, the idea of spending time together has become even more important and precious. The ad's sweet and relatable.
ये है कश्यप परिवार। यहाँ रोज 8 बजे कुछ होता है। लाइट जाती है।
लाइट चली गई। बहुत गर्मी है यार।
और गर्मी के बहाने से आइसक्रीम खुल जाती है।
मेरा चोको आई में।
हर रोज 8 बजे ये होता है।
लाइट चली गई, आइसक्रीम खाओ।
लो, बज गए 8। पर आज क्या हुआ?
लाइट क्यों नहीं गई? 8 बज गई।
आज लाइट क्यों नहीं गई? क्या मतलब है फॉल्ट ठीक हो गया? अब शाम को लाइट ही नहीं जाएगी? कमाल यार, लाइट ही नहीं जाएगी।
मगर नहीं, शाही मेवा मलाई।
लाइट चली गई।
कुछ परंपराओं का जमा रहना फैमिली की खुशियों के लिए जरूरी होता है। दूध की अच्छाई और ढेर सारे प्यार से बनी मदर डेयरी आइसक्रीम। मदर डेयरी आइसक्रीम,
रिश्तों का स्वाद बढ़ाए।
And that's a wrap on this episode of Melt. Do follow us on social media. Our handle is Ready to Melt, and stay updated with all that's happening in the world of advertising and marketing with our daily Melt updates on our website readytomelt.com. I shall see you next week, same time, same place. Goodbye.